The story of American wrestling has always featured, in the modern age at least, two distinct sides, WWE and the other. More often than not, WWE has been huge and dominant and powerful, but there's always been a competitor trying to push it close, but this has taken a few different forms. In the 90s, it was WCW, which did better than really anybody ever has for a time. In the 2010s, I reckon it just became the indie scene in general, and in the 2020s, it has, of course, been AEW. But in that slightly tricky period in the early 2000s, just after WCW had gone out of business, in the summer of 2002, there was a new promotion born, which, God, it tried. It really tried to be the next big thing. That promotion is, of course, TNA, Total Non-Stop Action. And for much of its lifespan, it has been the number 2 promotion in North America, but you could argue about the effectiveness of it, I suppose. There's been a lot of ups and downs, man. There's been a lot of ups and downs. But it's always been there, and despite it recently becoming quite cozy with WWE, for much of that time, I've always respected TNA for trying to represent this other side of mainstream American wrestling. So now, thanks to this event getting quite consistently nominated by the good folk over at my Patreon, thank you very much, Patreon people, thank you for supporting the channel so much, I couldn't do it without you, but you keep voting for this one, and I'm going to have to do it now. We're going to take a look at the first ever TNA pay-per-view. It's a messy one. It's really messy. My name's Jack the Jobber, and this is Very Weird Wrestling. Let's go. As the story goes, shortly after Vince McMahon bought out WCW and gleefully announced on air that he would not be renewing the contract of Jeff Jarrett, Double J took a fishing trip with wrestling journalist Bob Ryder and his father Jerry Jarrett, an old-school Southern wrestling promoter. There, the three came up with this idea to create a new number 2 promotion in American wrestling to fill that void, and getting around the difficulty of securing a major TV deal, they instead decided to run weekly pay-per-views, and thus, Total Non-Stop Action was born. On top of this, maybe due to the Jarrett family's connections in Southern wrestling and everything, TNA also instantly became the new flagship promotion of the National Wrestling Alliance, which hadn't been in great shape up to this point in the last few years. After WCW left the alliance in 1993 and then ECW left the alliance in shocking fashion the following year, the NWA had just kind of existed for the rest of the 90s as a collection of smaller independent promotions. And this was a mutually beneficial deal because with the birth of TNA, the NWA would once again be kind of more relevant in the wrestling landscape, while on TNA's part of the deal, they would suddenly have this air of grand old legitimacy brought with this affiliation with the National Wrestling Alliance. They would also gain access to the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, a belt that dates all the way back to 1948. Although sadly, for the fans of the big gold version of the belt, it would not be in this form. In fact, that belt was owned by the Fed at this point and was soon to be around the waist of Triple H. Bow down, etc., etc., etc. And exciting news as well, guys, because this first ever show is also going to see a new NWA World's Heavyweight Champion crowned in the main event. So with all that out of the way, what else is there left to do but dive headfirst into the first ever NWA TNA weekly wrestling pay-per-view. Will it be able to successfully walk this tightrope between on one side being this radical revolutionary new competitor to WWE, while on the other side respecting the proud heritage and traditions of the NWA and pro wrestling itself? Or is it going to largely be a bad show, relying instead on big names, stupid gimmicks and shock humour at the expense of actual wrestling and actual talent? Let's find out. These men are dressed as rude body parts. Full disclosure, I've watched this show before, but it was about 10 years ago, the last time I've watched it in full, and I suspect, due to its kind of place in wrestling infamy, you've probably watched it as well. A lot of you anyway. And I was about to say, don't let that deter you from watching my breakdown of it. I think those people in particular are going to be watching on with a certain glee. It's June 19th, 2002, and we are in Huntsville, Alabama, nicknamed the Rocket City. And who's going to get the rocket strapped to them tonight? We're going to wait and see. First person out of the entranceway is the now legendary commentator Don West. Although at this point, he was pretty new to wrestling and perhaps didn't understand all of its conventions, but what he lacked in knowledge, he certainly more than made up for in sheer enthusiasm. Of course, I am not here to rip on the late great Don West, but I do have to question the way he introduces one of his broadcast colleagues, calling him the most influential man in wrestling. So before this person emerged from the entranceway, I put my thinking cap on. I was like, in 2002, who's the most influential man in all of wrestling? I mean, Vince McMahon. Failing that, Steve Austin or The Rock. But it's not going to be any of those guys. So who on earth is he talking about? He's talking about Ed Ferrara. Yeah, that's Ed Ferrara, most famous for being Vince Russo's best friend and writing partner in the WWF, and then once again being Vince Russo's best friend and writing partner during the very worst years of World Championship Wrestling. Russo would end up joining TNA, of course, but thankfully, for the purposes of us, in this video, at this time period, he wouldn't yet join for a few weeks. So we've missed him by a few weeks, go us. But I think Ferrara's presence here acts as kind of a dark omen. You know when Paul Bearer comes out before a big Undertaker return and it's all like, ooh, yeah, and that's Ed Ferrara. And then here comes the Lord of Darkness, Vince Russo. Mike Tenay completes our announced team trio, and hey, let's check the name of the show, guys. I believe it's Total Non-Stop Action, so that means straight on with the action, right? Right? Actually, in this instance, the company's first ever show of total non-stop action, the action actually takes quite a while to even get started. That's largely because of a super heavyweight wrestler named Cheeks who accidentally broke the ring in a pre-show match, forcing a real switcheroo at the last minute of the running order to give them extra time to fix the ring. So ironically, the first ever action we see in total non-stop action is actually a lot of talking. Like a very long talking segment. And there's a lot of characters as well. Loads of characters involved. I'm like, am I watching a wrestling show or reading a Thomas Pynchon novel? I mean, I've never read a Pynchon novel, but I own 3 of them on my bookshelf. So yeah, I'm that guy, unfortunately. I'm actually a bit scared of trying to read any of them because from what I can tell, anybody who reads them gets a little bit too obsessed as well. And I don't want to be sat here in a few months' time being like, okay guys, let's now delve into very weird wrestling. Just kidding, let's exhaustively break down the crying of Lot 49. There'll be a small subset of you out there who are like, no, you should actually do that, Jack. And while I appreciate the enthusiasm, YouTube, you know, views, ad rates, and so on. Ring announcer Jeremy Borash introduces some past legends of the NWA into the ring. Here we go. We have Harley Race, Dory Funk Jr., Jackie Fargo, Bullet Bob Armstrong, who legitimately has a better knee dance than his son Road Dogg. Fair enough. All good so far. Anyway, now things start to go wrong. We got our first big botch of the show, everybody. Borash goes, everybody please welcome NWA executive Bill Behrens. And here comes 2 people. One of them a woman. So I don't know if they're Bill Behrens. No, in fact, the nameplate shows that it's Corsica Joe and Sarah Lee. And here comes the real Bill Behrens behind them. I think, honestly, try not to laugh. But that's a very minor mistake. There's much, much worse later on. Things that can't even really be called mistakes, just deliberate bad decisions. Anyway, it's time to bring out the biggest NWA star to the ring. Of course, the Dragon, Ricky Steamboat. Ricky's got the actual physical NWA Championship title belt with him as well. He gets in the ring, gets on the mic, he plugs his win over Ric Flair at the Chi-Town Rumble in the late 80s. All right, mate, you won. Stop going on about it. You lost the next few matches, didn't you? And then Steamboat says, this belt means more to me and my fellow legends than any other wrestling title. Fair enough. The Dragon reveals to us the main event of the show, saying that himself and his fellow NWA representatives, they have all selected 20 wrestlers to compete in a big old gauntlet for the gold match. And he himself, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, will be the referee for the final fall between the last 2 wrestlers involved. And at the announcement that Ricky the Dragon Steamboat is going to be the special guest referee on commentary, Mike Tenay goes, whoa! I can't emphasize enough how huge Tenay pops for this. The man loves a special guest referee stipulation, apparently. Now, this, of course, reveals to us that the title is vacant, and you might be wondering why the title is vacant. Such a prestigious title just floating around in the wrestling wilderness for about a decade. How did that end up with no holders at all? We'll get to that later on in the video, but I will explain why. We just kind of need to move on because there's still more talking before we get into all the total non-stop action. Steamboat poses with the belt all proud. Yes, that's right, Ricky. That's fantastic. So prestigious. And then he is interrupted by the theme music that would strike fear into the hearts of the TNA roster and fans for the next decade plus. And that music, of course, is Nina, 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 the Chosen One. That's right, it's Jeff Jarrett. Jarrett's here, he's made it to the party. He's dressed like Ken from the Barbie universe. I'm just Jeff, anywhere else I'd be the best. And Jarrett calls this gauntlet stipulation the biggest load of crap he's ever heard in his life. Jarrett starts asking all the legends in the ring if their reigns began with the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, if they first won the belt in some multi-man gimmick match. And he's like, no, of course not. Of course you didn't. And he's got a bit of a point. Suddenly he is interrupted by Jackie Fargo, one of the legends in the ring. And he's like, Jeff Jarrett, you kissed my air. Now, I assume that Jackie Fargo was given this role in the promo segment because he's probably the best talker of all the legends in the ring. Unfortunately, he does sometimes talk away from the microphone, like way away from the microphone. But we get the general gist of what he's saying. And what he's saying is, as punishment for Jarrett's disrespect of these legends, he's now going to have to enter the gauntlet at number 1. Jarrett starts to reply saying, well, I'm just going to beat all 19 other guys anyway. But then he's interrupted by one of those 19 other guys, Ken Shamrock. Big pop for Shamrock, of course. This wasn't too far removed from his exploits in the WWF and, of course, in the MMA world too. So Shamrock gets on the mic now and he says, right, first of all, Jarrett, I've got to agree with you. This stipulation is a load of crap. And I'm like, wait, what? Who are the baby faces here? Presumably the NWA legends are baby faces. They've chosen this stipulation. We should be on their side as the audience. Jarrett's the heel, clearly. He's come out and disrespected everybody and he's against the stipulation. But then Shamrock's come out, probably a baby face, let's remember that. And now he's agreeing with Jarrett. What? It's already a mess. Also, as we'll go on to see, it's not even a gauntlet anyway, really. It's kind of more of a Royal Rumble type of stipulation with more and more men joining as the match goes on, right? So it's fun. Okay, Ken? Bloody Ken. I'm just Ken. He's Ken as well. We do have fun. We do have fun. We do have fun. Click the like button. We do have fun. We do. Shamrock says, all right, Jarrett, you might be whipping 18 other guys in this match, but you're not going to beat me up. And on one hand, okay, yeah, cool, babyface, tough and brave and strong. But on the other hand, way to bury all other 18 guys in the match. And then they're both interrupted, wait for it, by Scott Hall, who's in the crowd. Huge pop, possibly the biggest pop of this entire show throughout, by the way, because this was very much a surprise appearance. And yeah, Scott Hall is here in TNA. This feels big. I also quite like it because it makes thematic sense here. Of course, Scott Hall famously sauntered into WCW in the 90s and ushered in a brand new era of wrestling. So now I get what they're trying to say here. Here's Scott Hall sauntering into our new promotion and hopefully ushering in another new dawn. And obviously, it goes without saying that Scott Hall's a face in this situation. How could he not be? Listen to that reaction. He gets on the mic, and the first thing he says is, you know what, Jarrett and Shamrock, I actually agree with you as well. This stipulation's a load of crap. Oh, I nearly turned it off at this point. This video nearly didn't happen. The only possible explanation I have for this is that they all agreed backstage that they were going to come out and say it, but I'm very surprised that Jeff Jarrett was okay with this. Doesn't it kind of make his own promotion look a bit bad from the start? I genuinely don't know how on earth this happened. I mean, 3 of the biggest names coming out and immediately burying the stipulation of the first main event in company history. Anyway, Jarrett gets the last word, I suppose. We all knew he would, telling the other 2 that the only guy they need to be afraid of in the match is him, Jeff Jarrett. And he also tells Jackie Fargo that he's going to regret this day for the rest of his life. And then Jarrett storms off. And mercifully, that first segment is now out of the way. So yeah, the segment ends. And by the way, I really love this closing shot of Jarrett. It looks so asymmetrical and surreal. The composition of the scene is really daring and, in my opinion, a complete cinematic triumph. Right, what's next? Segment number 2, total non-stop action. Surely we're going to get some wrestling, right? No, more talking. Backstage we go, where we meet our backstage interviewer for the evening, Goldilocks. She is with a wrestler called Puppet the Psycho Dwarf, her words, not mine, and Goldilocks is hyping him up so much that for a second I'm confused. I actually started to think, is she actually his manager? She's actually not. I think she just kind of is vibing with him in this segment, but she would go on to share a far more infamous segment with Puppet a few weeks later on, where she would find him having fun with himself inside of a trash can. Puppet would also be part of another infamous segment in TNA's early history where he decided to pull a firearm in the middle of the ring, only for Jeff Jarrett to save the day by cracking him in the back with a steel chair. A weirdly heroic act for the company's top heel to do. Yeah. Anyway, we start to learn Puppet's character motivation, where he's annoyed because there are two other mini wrestlers on the show tonight. They've been booked against each other, but Puppet is annoyed at them being booked ahead of him. He's interrupted by the trolls by Jeff Jarrett, who storms in complaining about Jackie Fargo, and that's just kind of the end of the segment. And very much the top feud in TNA, it's made clear here, is Jeff Jarrett versus one of his dad's friends. I can't imagine feuding with one of my dad's friends. I've met Kev, and he's way bigger than me. And even though even though I'm a couple of decades younger, he would batter me. Finally, it's time for some wrestling. Oh my god, we've done it. It's a 6-man, Raphael's so excited. It's a 6-man tag team match. The babyface team comes out first, and in hindsight, this team is absolutely stacked. Why, it's future all-time great AJ Styles, future indie legend Low-Ki, and by this stage, already a bit of a legend in the industry, to be honest, Jerry Lynn. This lineup is so exciting, we even get a shot of all the NWA legends huddled around a comically small TV backstage, because they just want to watch this exciting young talent, apart from Harley Race, who clearly could not be bothered. And if you know your TNA history, you'll know who they're taking on. And if you don't know your TNA history, hold on to your hats, because these three kind of all-time greats are taking on a trio of Elvis impersonators. Yes, this is the team of the Flying Elvises, who all dress like Elvis. Fortunately, they are also, wrestlers. It's the relatively inexperienced trio of NWA indie guy Jorge Estrada and WCW trainees Jimmy Yang and Sonny Siaki. Jimmy Yang would, of course, go on to be Jimmy Wang Yang in WWE. Estrada would keep wrestling for about a year before retiring, and Siaki would bounce around between various different indie promotions and developmental deals, never quite cashing in on the promise people clearly saw in him. And then I think he retired in 2009 after donating a kidney. So fair play to him. The heels jump the faces at the bell, and we're off to the races immediately. And oh my god, it's total non-stop action. Someone hits a Hurricane Rana, and Don West pops so big for it. I think legitimately because this is probably the first time he'd ever seen one. And to be fair, I have to be fair to TNA's booking decisions here. This is a great choice of opener. It's wrestled at a frightening pace. It's 6 really, really talented guys. Even the less experienced ones are clearly very, very skilled, and they just send them all in there and say, go for it. And that's exactly what they do. I mean, Jerry Lynn hits Jimmy Wang Yang with a tilt-a-whirl so good that Jorge Estrada also sells it for some reason on the apron. He's just watching. Yang gets his revenge with like a back-flipping kick in the corner, which is so good I think Don West starts levitating, and clearly just everybody here is getting at least a bit of a chance to shine. Sonny Siaki uses his strength advantage to get the better of Low-Ki, and then Jorge Estrada shows us that he just loves doing flips, man. Springboard moonsault to get into the ring, followed by a running shooting star press. And he's moving so fast that I actually don't get a good screenshot of it, but I do get a screenshot of him nailing this pose. Excellent, excellent, excellent pro wrestling. Just when you think that maybe the match is about to start slowing down for a second, it just doesn't, and clearly everybody is out to impress. Low-Ki is just nailing some nasty strikes, AJ and Jimmy have a frighteningly good exchange for a few moments, and Jerry Lynn nails this crazy piledriver on Estrada. But then, things go wrong for the face team as Jimmy Yang, ducks a kick from Low-Ki, who accidentally nails AJ on the apron. That is the signal to head into our finishing stretch, and the heels take full advantage of this miscommunication. Jimmy Yang finishing things off with a corkscrew moonsault for the win. And I know what you're thinking, and I was thinking it too. First broadcasted match in company history, and the Elvises win? But the decision of the winner aside, this match succeeded, I think, from a booking point of view. It nailed the brief. Everybody in this match was very, very talented indeed. They all had good chemistry, and it was clearly faster and different to anything in WWE at this same time, even the Cruiserweight division. And even though TNA's X division didn't exist yet at this point, I think we can definitely consider this match like the spiritual birth of the X division. Actually, looking at it now, the X Division came along a lot sooner than I thought. Show number 2 is when the X Division title was introduced, and it would first be won, very fittingly, by AJ Styles. We are now straight into match number 2, total non-stop action, and it's the mini-match the Puppet was complaining about backstage just before. It's Tio versus Hollywood. We are given no character information about either of these two wrestlers, but we do learn immediately that Hollywood is the heel because he jumps Tio while Tio's posing in the corner, and then they botch a head scissors and Hollywood's head goes snapping into the canvas at quite a frightening speed. To be fair to both guys, they don't care about this botch for a second and they just carry on going with the high-octane, very exciting action. I don't know if this is true, but I'm getting the sense that these two guys know each other very well and they're just leaving it all in the ring. Tio gets some babyface shine by pulling Hollywood's gear over his head and just laying in some chops to him, and there's no way they could have followed that 6-man opening tag team match, but they're giving it a hell of a try. Hollywood fights back into it and gets a near fall off a frog splash, but then Tio makes his comeback and gets the win with a very unique kind of flipping senton maneuver. And it's quite short, but that's all it needed to be. It only got a few minutes, but it was very enjoyable for what it was. The crowd was certainly into it. Unfortunately, though, the same cannot be said of Ed Ferrara on commentary. Like, TNA and Don were trying at least to take it seriously, but Ed Ferrara was just cracking jokes incessantly, getting all in the way of the action, in my opinion. Yes, I get the argument, he's meant to be a heel commentator, but at the same time, if you're a heel commentator, then support the heel, but he wasn't supporting Hollywood in this match. He was literally just burying the action. But we can always ignore the announce team if we really try hard, I suppose. Wait a minute, Ed's in the ring now? Yeah, he and Don are in the ring because they want to give us a sneak preview of next week's Lingerie Battle Royal. Cheers, lads. Nice one. They announced the arrival of various different women. I'm not going to go through all of them because, frankly, I honestly don't know who all of them are. Some of them are presumably wrestlers, but some of them are presumably models with no wrestling experience. There are a few recognizable faces, though. Look, for example, there's a young Mickie James. We also have Daphne in there, also Francine and Elektra from ECW, and like I say, a lot of women who, and I'm not blaming them for this, but a lot of women who are clearly there for a paycheck and maybe aren't too familiar with this whole wrestling nonsense. Francine gets on the mic and says to Don West, "Listen here, pudgy." And look at Don West's face. Sell it, man. Look sad or angry or something. Sell what she's saying. But no, Don is just... It's actually nice to watch the early days of Don West because you're watching somebody fall in love with wrestling in real time for the first time in their lives. But anyway, Don, you should be selling this insult from Francine. Look at Mickie James, for example. What a pro. Francine says that she's the queen of extreme and none of these other women deserve to be in the ring with her, and basically she's being girl Jeff Jarrett from the opening segment. But now Elektra gets on the mic and says, "Who do you think you are, Francine? Yeah, you're the queen of extreme. So what? This is a brand new company, and maybe you're just ashamed of single-handedly bankrupting another one." Time out 1 second there. I think there's a gap in my knowledge here because I don't know how Francine can be blamed for bankrupting ECW. Unless there's something I'm just completely overlooking. Please do let me know if you know in the comment section down below. If this is something really obvious, I'm going to be annoyed. If not, what on earth does that mean? But I think it's true though in kayfabe because Francine's like, God damn it, she's really got me there. And she's so angry by this that she actually just attacks her. They have a bit of a brawl. Francine rips Elektra's shirt open. Don's straight in there with a towel to cover her up. She's wearing a bra. It's fine. It's not like Mae Young at the Rumble or anything. But he's straight in there with the towel, and that's kind of setting up the Lingerie Battle Royal for next week, which we won't cover. Don't worry. Oh man, imagine if I do an episode 2 of this. Maybe one day. Francine bails out of there, vows to win the Battle Royal next week, which she doesn't. And that's the segment. Now, you might have noticed that at this point, the show has taken a bit of a downturn after 2 promising opening matches. Arguably now, it never recovers. Backstage we go for an interview segment with Mortimer Plumtree, who has a cricket bat, which is just not addressed. I like cricket. So for now, I'm like, maybe I'll like this Mortimer Plumtree character. It doesn't last. Well, no, I should point out, it's not Mortimer Plumtree's fault. He's less a wrestler and more of an actor, and he's just kind of been thrust into this situation, and he does well with what he is given. Unfortunately, what he is given is one of the worst things in TNA history. Plumtree is a manager, that's his role in the promotion, and he hypes up his tag team that are going to be wrestling next, saying that they were once his childhood tormentors, but now he controls their very lives. I'm intrigued. That doesn't last long. He says that they only talk when he allows them to talk, and they only wear what he allows them to wear. They are the Johnsons. Right, let's have a look at the Johnsons then. Yep, there they are. Yeah, okay. So in real life, the Johnsons are otherwise known as the Shane twins, and they will go on to be Gemini in the WWE. But for now, they're the Johnsons. I would love to be a fly on the wall in the early creative meetings, because how on earth did this come about? Because some of the decisions made so far have actually been, in my opinion, the correct ones. But then also we've got stuff like this. So the conversations must have gone like, right, let's throw all the most athletic lads in a big 6-man to start off the show at like 100 miles an hour. Yeah, fair enough. That's a good idea for the first ever match. That's actually a really good idea. Oh, let's get Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in for a bit of prestige, you know? Yes, that's also a good idea. And let's get Scott Hall to come down through the crowd and make a big splash. Yes, great idea as well. And let's get 2 characters just to dress like dicks. Yes, that's a great idea as well. I almost forgot to do that. I almost forgot to write that on the booking sheet, but I'm glad you've reminded me. And now this show is going to be a smash hit. That was the missing ingredient. Anyway, the Johnsons' opponents are 2 wrestlers that we all know, or most of us anyway. Psychosis, formerly of the Lucha World, ECW, WCW, and then eventually WWE, and his partner, Cowboy James Storm, who of course would go on to become a bit of a TNA legend. But of course, this is the year 2002, so this isn't James Storm as we might know him now. This is just small little baby James Storm. Look at the cute little baby James Storm firing his toy guns on the turnbuckle. You go, little baby James Storm. Now, James Storm and Psychosis, right, I think we can all agree, should be winning this match. Because in this match, they are the 2 wrestlers not dressed like dong-alongs. So the match starts off with the usual tag team formula. You know, the heels take control, but then Psychosis fights them off, gets the hot tag to James Storm, the babyfaces clear the ring. Wait, stop paying attention to the wrestling right now, because there's a pretty lady on the ramp. This is Alicia Webb, formerly known in the WWF as Ryan Shamrock, where she played the sister wife of Ken Shamrock. I never quite got the tone they were going for there. So now, for a match that started off quite normally, really, there's suddenly way too much going on. The heels are double teaming the faces, there's a woman on the ramp who's not involved with the match, the announce team are trying to tell us that the referee's trying to communicate with her, meanwhile the manager's got a cricket bat, the heel team are human dicks, and I'm just like, what's going on? This started off with Ricky Steamboat and Jackie Fargo talking about tradition and respect of pro wrestling. And it's... You won't believe how many takes that took, and it was not worth it. I nearly passed out there. Anyway, James Storm tries to mount a comeback, but Plumtree grabs his leg from the outside. That turns the tide of the match, and then the Johnsons get the win, pinning future company legend Cowboy James Storm as well. Anyway, what was Alicia Webb even there for? Because after the match, she kind of pesters the referee to give her some form of payment, and then eventually he does pay her, but we don't know why, and everyone's like, ooh, mysterious, wonder what's going to happen. Let's find out where this went. Alicia Webb's Wikipedia page says the following: Webb began to appear as a talent scout in TNA, appearing on the ramp and accepting money from various different wrestlers. This storyline did not go anywhere, and Webb left the promotion shortly thereafter. Brilliant. Genius. And also, if you've watched the other episodes in my Very Weird Wrestling series, you'll realise that this referee is Slick Johnson, who appears in my Victory Road 2009 review as a corrupt referee in a match involving women. So I'm forced to believe that either Slick Johnson was pitching these specific storylines himself, or someone in TNA Creative really likes seeing him in these sort of situations. It's shady. I don't know what to make of it. To the back we go once again with a real serious tag team now, actually, guys, which is a refreshing thing to see after the very gimmicky and stupid Johnsons. These are the Dups. They are the team of Bo Dup, Stan Dup, and their relative / manager, valet woman, Fluff Dup. And yes, they're all related, and yes, they mention this all the time. It's uncomfortable. You know what they're referring to here. This is our sixth cousin, Fluffed Up. And I'm actually not doing that much worse of a job than the writers here. Bill Perrins wanders into shot now, the NWA executive from the opening segment with all the legends in the ring, and he scolds the Dups and says, hey, no drinking now in the locker room there. This is the serious wrestling business. And then Barons walks off and they keep drinking, going, who ever heard of getting drunk off a beer? I'm like, oh, what are they like, the bloody dups? Anyway, next, there'll be more of the dups later on, next segment. Now, I think you could definitely argue that in modern wrestling, we are suffering perhaps from celebrity fatigue in WWE. So many celebrities involved all of the time. Travis Scott, Jelly Roll, all the rest of it. Whereas in this case, I'm kind of relieved actually that we're in 2002 because we're away from all of that. Anyway, now it's time to meet Hermie Sadler and Sterling Marlin, two NASCAR drivers, and they've got something to say. So Borash just starts interviewing Marlin just about like how the season's going, because apparently he's in the lead of the Drivers' Championship at this moment in time, and Marlin's like, you know, yeah, a little bit of pressure, nothing I can't handle, we're just going to take it one race at a time. And I'm like, what? I was watching a wrestling show. By the way, he'd end the season in 18th, so maybe TNA cursed him with this appearance. Thankfully, though, this very boring segment is interrupted by a very familiar voice. People love it there. What's up? You feel me? Well, it's not our truth, but it's Ron Killings. It's K Crush, in fact. And he says, I'm sick to death of listening to this. You two have no business being in a pro wrestling ring. And I'm like, yes, get them our truth. What a baby face. He's actually meant to be the heel here, but what a baby face. Then things get uncomfortable really fast. And even though nobody says it out loud, it's clear what they're doing here. Because, right, Ron Killing starts saying, my kind of athletes, not like your kind. And on the surface, they're talking about wrestlers versus NASCAR drivers, but that's not what they're talking about. There's so many undertones here at play. And then Hermie Sadler, one of the NASCAR drivers, starts saying, like, look how weirdly you're dressed. And I'm like, no, I take back what I said earlier, bring back the Johnsons. If what I'm kind of picking up here is correct, then Killings, quite justifiably, attacks the baby faces. But don't worry, because they're saved by Grandmaster Sexay, or Brian Christopher, or Brian Lawler. The announce team can't seem to make up their minds what to call it. The good guys, and I use that term very loosely, clear the ring, and then Brian gets on the mic and says, and I quote, yo, 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 listen up, you mofo. Next week, why don't your kind come and take on my kind? Ooh, and the crowd cheer a bit too loud as well at this, and it's really uncomfortable. I mean, respect to Ron Killings for even being involved in a segment like this and not breaking character and not letting anything faze him, because at certain points, the whole arena are cheering quite rabidly against him, but he manages to keep things going, and he's dragged away by security. Look how bored this security guard is, by the way, and that mercifully is the end of an incredibly uncomfortable segment. If you don't believe me, that, you know, my theory about what they were saying is actually what they were saying, just watch. It's quite apparent in real time. Backstage we go, where Jeff Jarrett has gotten his hands on Jackie Fargo. He's dragged away by security. Because the action never stops in TNA, except sometimes when it does. Another tag team match now, this time featuring the duo of Christian York and Joey Matthews. They have 1 million abs each, and one of them would of course go on to be in Eminem and in J&J Security. And these handsome, ripped young boys are taking on, oh no, it's the Dups. I told you they'd be back. Remember that last tag team match where the Johnsons beat a quite exciting and potentially interesting tag team? Yeah, keep that in mind. Fluffed Up is out for the match too. She distracts the faces at the bell and the heels take control. There's not really a lot of action to report. Everything's kind of chugging along in standard fashion. The only notable difference is that they are not in the right corners. I'll explain what I mean. In a broadcast tag team match, I'm afraid I'm going to need every single time, I'm going to need the face team in the top left, like furthest away from the camera, and I'm going to need the heel team in the bottom right corner closer to the camera. That's the way it should be, and that's not the way it is here. And it's just one of those things that just really took me out of the match. The babyfaces take control, and Christian York heads up top to finish things off, but the ref is distracted by a brawl on the outside, and Fluffed Up pulls York's legs away from him. Pulls legs York away. No, yeah, why not? Fluffed Up pulls legs York away from him, and this leads to the finish. I'm losing my mind. That's literally enough for the win. There's no need for like a follow-up move or anything. Bo Dup just grabs a handful of the tights, pins Christian York, and one, two, three, the Dups of the day belongs to the Dups. Yee-hoo! Yee! Yee! How do cowboys do that all the time? I just heard my upstairs neighbour take just a few tentative little steps up there after I whooped. He is definitely like, what is this lad up to? My word, between the Dupps and the Johnsons, this tag team division is really hotting up, you guys. I wonder who the first tag team champions are going to be. Turns out the actual first NWA TNA tag team champions were AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn. Wikipedia informs me that just after this event, TNA requested that the NWA tag team titles be vacated for use on their show. That makes me think that the existing champions, when TNA began, were like off in some other part of America, not going to be booked by TNA. Then I discovered that no, the existing champions were the Johnsons. So we've already seen the reigning champions on this show. The belts weren't mentioned. Then they were stripped off camera, out of canon, and then AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn won the tag belts when they were vacant. Do you know what would have been maybe more effective? And this is just my... If AJ and Jerry Lynn had beaten the Johnsons for the tag team titles. It's booking 101. And I think the Johnsons have been unjustly stripped of those belts, you know? I think that it's not, oh my God, am I becoming a fan of the Johnsons? I'm not going to joke about the acronym anymore of the promotion because it's now become very clear. It's so obvious that it is incapable of following one wrestling match with another wrestling match. So now it's time for a singy song. Yes, it's a performance from country music superstar Toby Keith, who I don't personally know much about, but I understand was a pretty big deal at the time in the country music world. I mean, he gets a huge pop here. So that's fine, you know, a big name. I just hope that, unlike the NASCAR drivers, he isn't put in a position of strength over one of the wrestlers on the show. Uh-oh. Bit of a musical botch now, because Toby starts performing his song, but the guitar's not plugged in. You can't hear his guitar, and he notices it, and he, like, sneakily fixes it, and I think he looks around like, I hope nobody noticed. Well, I did. I saw that. So, haha. Toby's song is all about America and how America's going to kick every other country's ass, which normally I would mock, but like it was a very politically sensitive time in the early 2000s in America, so I understand why he's done it. But one person who doesn't care about America is the chosen one, Jeff Jarrett. I think it actually might be the best bit of heel work on the show. Jarrett storms to the ring, shoves Toby Keith out the way in the middle of his song, and the crowd, I mean, it does get a lot of heat because the crowd were fully into the tune. Toby Keith tries to follow Jarrett to the ring so he can kick his ass, and a whole team of security get in the way, as if Toby Keith's like Brock Lesnar or something. Jarrett gets on the mic and says, Toby Keith, nobody wants to hear your damn song. And on commentary, Mike Tenay is like, speak for yourself, Jarrett. And I realised at this point that this whole show has just been Mike Tenay wanting to watch anything other than wrestling. Because earlier in the NASCAR segment, he was like, NASCAR drivers are real athletes, damn it, K-Crush. And Tenay is annoyed because Jarrett interrupted Toby Keith's song. But he interrupted it because the main event of the wrestling show is about to begin. And obviously Tenay's just like, oh, not more wrestling, lads. And that main event, of course, is the 20-man gauntlet for the gold to determine the next NWA World Heavyweight Champion. The first one under the TNA banner. Now, I mentioned earlier that I would explain how the NWA title became vacant leading up to this show, because despite losing a lot of its prominence in the 90s, the NWA did still exist, and its belt lineage did still exist in the build-up. So, how did this happen then? So, in the run-up to this show, the existing NWA World Heavyweight Champion was MMA grapple man and former WWF superstar Dan the Beast Severn. He was invited to this event, presumably to drop the title. That might just be my opinion, but it feels a bit dodgy, doesn't it? And Severn instead refused, saying that he was double booked and he had an MMA fight on the exact same day. Now, you might be thinking, as I initially did, that he was just scared of dropping the belt. He said, no, I still want to be NWA champion. You might be thinking, oh, Dan the Beast Severn, you big Mark, you big Marcus Aurelius. No, it turns out he did actually have a real... Check his MMA record. He was actually fighting on the day this event took place over in New Mexico. So TNA said, right, we'll be having that belt then, thank you very much. Stripped him of the title, and that's how the gauntlet for the gold came to be. As I sort of alluded to earlier, it's kind of more of a Royal Rumble with staggered entry, but then the final two people have a singles match with, as we've learned, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat as the special guest referee. We already know entrant number one is Jeff Jarrett. He was punished for his insolence by Jackie Fargo, but he doesn't care. He's going to win from number one. And his first opponent at number two is former WCW star Buff Bagwell, guys. I'm hearing unconfirmed reports that he is buff and he's got the stuff. Buff hits his blockbuster finisher quite early on. And again, I'm reminded that Don West hasn't seen much wrestling at this point because he's like, oh my god, yes! Unfortunately, the success of hitting his finishing move makes Buff a little bit overzealous. He charges at Jarrett, who eliminates him from the match. Let's see how Jarrett's doing, having just taken a finishing move. Oh, he's fresh as a daisy. He's absolutely fine. Number 3, huge pop from myself, because it's none other than, well, he's announced here as Lash LaRue, but you and I know him probably better as Corporal Cajun from the Misfits in Action! Once again, upstairs neighbour, I can't begin to imagine what he thinks is going on down here. Obviously, I now immediately want Corporal Cajun to win this match. Jarrett hits the stroke and dumps him out straight away. Entrant number 4 is Norman Smiley. God, the WCW lower mid-card is being represented strong tonight. Norman's doing quite well here to start off with. He does the wiggle, he actually takes control of the match, and then Jarrett hits a low blow, hits the stroke and throws him out. Jarrett's like Steve Austin in this one. He's just unstoppable. Who's going to eliminate Jeff Jarrett? Hold on to that thought. We'll get there eventually. Next up is the rather intimidating Puerto Rican wrestler Apollo, who I think is vaguely reminiscent of Batista, and I think does actually hit a Batista bomb quite soon into his arrival in the match. He's actually about to eliminate Jarrett, but then the next entrant is K Crush, who saves his fellow heel in Jarrett, and they strike up a bit of an alliance, just in time for the arrival of the next entrant, Slash. No, not the guitarist from Guns N' Roses, you guys. Slash is actually a wrestler known for his occasional appearances in ECW and sometimes the WWF, now a scary goth under the management of Father James Mitchell. And Father James Mitchell has the honour of managing the first ever spooky heel stable in TNA history, which is a bit of a relief because any new promotion worth its salt needs a spooky heel stable. It's just a matter of course. And the other members of the stable are later entrants in this very gauntlet. So don't you worry, we'll keep an eye out for those rascals, the bloody disciples of the new church. What are they like? The next entrant is, oh my god, it's Scott Steiner. Nothing's finer than Scotty Steiner. This match is about to pick up. Wait, no, it's not. It's a guy called Del Rios. I was completely fooled, and I think a lot of the crowd were as well, judging by the pop he got, and then the immediate silence that followed. A man named Justice is next. He would, of course, go on to be Abyss, another bit of a TNA legend, and he's followed by Conan. All right, Conan, mate. Good to see Conan. You might have noticed at this stage, I've not really talked much about the in-ring action, and that's because at this point in the match, there's not really a lot going on. Like, you know that portion of a lot of Rumble matches where it just gets bogged down and the action becomes slow and nobody's really trying to eliminate each other. And even if they are, if it's a heel, they get saved by another heel. And if it's a face about to get eliminated, they get saved by another face. And it's as if we're waiting for something to spark the match back into life. Could it be our next entrant, perhaps? No, because the next person to arrive is not even an entrant in the match. It's a manager, former ECW foul-mouthed manager Joel Gertner, actually, and he's here to introduce the next entrant, Bruce. So we're about to complete the trifecta because we've had the uncomfortable racial stuff earlier in the show. We've had a sprinkling of sexism as well, which is just a bit of a given at this point in wrestling history, of course. And now it's time for another marginalised group to come under serious fire. And that is because Bruce is one half of a tag team called the Rainbow Express, and their gimmick is that they're a gay couple, and that is enough to make them heels. And when Bruce arrives here, by the way, the crowd are like, boo! Like, the heat is terrifying. Bruce, by the way, is former WCW wrestler Kiwi, which was just as tasteful and brilliant. Now, this is where TNA's motive here becomes apparent, because the babyface announcer, Don West, starts going like, oh my god, stop shoving it in our faces, Bruce. What are you doing? And then Ed Ferrara, the despicable heel commentator who we have been taught to hate over the duration of this show for multiple different reasons, is like, oh, you know what? Bruce is all business in the ring, and as for his personal life, he can totally do what he wants, man. This is the land of the free. And I'm like, oh no, we're meant to hate him. We're meant to agree with Don. I was gobsmacked watching this. It was really awful. Mercifully, it's on to the next entrant. And this one's a Steiner. Not the one I was waiting for. It's Rick Steiner, though. And he's about to be a dog-faced gremlin all over this gauntlet, baby. And now the eliminations begin to start again. You know, Rick gets rid of Slash, he gets rid of the Future Abyss, he hits a clothesline on Del Rios and just kind of ignores the fact that Del Rios has very obviously ripped off his brother's entire gimmick. Out next, we've got another member of James Mitchell's spooky stable, and who's that off in the distance? Could it be? Yes, that is the Wall, brother. Well, you might know him as the Wall, but I, of course, know him better as Sergeant AWOL from the Misfits in action. Sorry. Anyway, I should calm down because here he's not Sergeant AWOL, and here he's not even known as the Wall. He's actually Malice, and he's a big threat in this match. Malice hits chokeslams on like half the field and just starts throwing them out. Bruce is gone, Ron Killings is gone, Big Papa Dump is gone. Do you see what I've done there? It's Del Rios. Conan's gone, although he refuses to take a bump and just kind of staggers to the guardrail for a breather. Good on you, Conan. What a pro, brother. Also, in, I think, the single most terrifying spot of the night, Malice low bridges a charging Rick Steiner, who, like, I've never seen Rick Steiner move like this. He flies, like he launches himself over the top rope, just disappears from view behind the apron. It's really scary, and I'm left with the question, what on earth was Rick Steiner thinking? Mercifully, the next shot we see of him is he's alive on the outside, but I'm going to say he's struggling. Suddenly we're down to just Malice, Jarrett, and Apollo in the ring, but they are quickly joined by our next entrant, Scott Hall. Scott hits a razor's edge on Jarrett. Jarrett's flat out. Scott could definitely eliminate him if he wanted to, but instead, Hall beckons to the back. Get out here, my buddy. Who's his buddy, you might ask? Kevin Nash, maybe? No. It's Toby Keith from before. And look, Jarrett's a smart man. He's got a reputation over the course of his career as a bit of a backstage politician for a reason. And on this show, you might have noticed, he's set up multiple future feuds for himself to keep himself in the spotlight. I just have to question the choice of the partner in those feuds, because so far we've got his dad's mate, Jackie Fargo, and country singer Toby Keith, and those are Jarrett's feuds going forwards. Toby Keith gets in the ring and hits Jarrett with, of all things, a big vertical suplex, actually. And it's done pretty well. Like, he kind of nails it. Now a mysterious green light hits the ring, as if D-Generation X are going to make their entrance or something. Nobody comes out. Timings are kind of mixed up around this sort of time. And then Scott Hall and Toby Keith throw Jeff Jarrett out of the ring. And then Jarrett heads to the back. And then, humiliatingly, Toby Keith storms after Jarrett like he's going to kick his ass. He is Brock Lesnar. All right, there's still a match going on, yeah. Next is Wildcat Chris Harris, who would, of course, go on to form America's Most Wanted with James Storm, one of TNA's best ever tag teams. And he is followed by, yes, it's Gangrel. Well, it's not Gangrel. It's the Vampire Warrior. I think that's what the green light was about before. Someone was really early on their cue, if so. I think the biggest tragedy of Toby Keith's run-in is that it clearly confused whoever was in charge of these cues, because the gap between Chris Harris's entrance and the Vampire Warrior's entrance is really minuscule, and we don't even get to hear any sort of theme music for Vampire Warrior. I know it probably wouldn't have been the classic Gangrel, you know, the WWF, the blah, bum, 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 blah. You know the one. Probably wouldn't have been, but I bet it would have been a similar level of banger. No, there's no way. Next up is Devon Storm, formerly Crowbar in WCW, of course, and he is another member of James Mitchell's Disciples of the New Church, Spooky Stable. And yeah, everyone's just kind of brawling still, or at least pretending to, except for Scott Hall, who's just lounging in a corner. But it's Scott Hall, so he can get away with it. Next up is Steve Corino, and I was like, man, I totally just didn't even remember that he was in TNA at all. He hits the ring, and then something almost happens as Malice is almost eliminated, but then his manager, James Mitchell, saves him with a little push on the bum-bum. A little push there. And now you're safe, Malice. Continue. Ken Shamrock's out next, starts laying people out, and then it's time for our final entrant, Grandmaster Sexay. Now, once again, you might have realized it's been quite a long time now since any eliminations happened. Don't worry, because for some reason, Brian Christopher is this match's version of 2001 Kane. I don't know why. He gets rid of Chris Harris, he gets rid of Crowbar, he gets rid of Gangrel, which I think personally is a massive booking error. And he also gets rid of Steve Corino, right? And that's 4 eliminations, and wait for it, that is the second most of anybody in this match when all is said and done. Behind Malice, at least. But who decided this then? Who decided that Grandmaster Sexay was going to be the Hulk Hogan of TNA? Well, until the real Hulk Hogan of TNA showed up. I'm talking about Hulk Hogan. I love what happens next, right? Malice destroys Grandmaster Sexay with a big chokeslam. Probably should then try to throw him out, but instead he then stops and calls a team meeting with the other wrestlers still in the match, like, right guys, we now need to really work together to eliminate the huge threat that is Grandmaster Sexay. Anyway, Shamrock boots Bryan in the spine, throws him out, and we're down to the final four of Ken Shamrock, Malice, Apollo, and Scott Hall. Hall and Apollo try to team up on Malice, but it backfires on them in spectacular fashion as Malice eliminates both of them, and we're down to the final two of Malice and Ken Shamrock, with, of course, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat arriving on the scene to be the special guest referee. So yes, it's time for kind of like the main event of the night, Ken Shamrock versus Malice. Shamrock's way more fresh than Malice, of course, which Ed Ferrara correctly points out on commentary. I'm not certain why they booked it this way, but it's TNA, man. Yes, it's the first ever episode of a TNA show, but it is at heart still TNA. Malice goes for the chokeslam, Shamrock reverses it into an armbar. Malice is struggling, but he makes the ropes because Father James Mitchell pushes the bottom rope closer to him. Awful refereeing from the Dragon, it has to be said. Undeterred, Shamrock grabs an ankle lock, and Malice again makes the ropes after struggling for a while, and Shamrock just refuses to break the ankle lock. And Ricky Steamboat goes 1, 2, 3. You know how a wrestler has until 5? Steamboat gets to 7 before shoving Ken Shamrock away. I think our boy Malice is getting screwed. Again, the dynamic's very confusing because then Shamrock, the babyface, threatens Ricky Steamboat. Literally the purest babyface of all time. But okay, I guess they're trying to make Shamrock a bit of a tweener. Like, yeah, he's a face, but he's got a badass edge. A bit like Stone Cold, guys. Maybe this promotion's going to be as good as the Attitude Era was. I imagine they thought. Anyway, this gives Malice the chance to once again go for a chokeslam, but Shamrock reverses it into, in all fairness, a very nice belly-to-belly suplex, pins Malice 1, 2, 3, and becomes the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And I know what you're thinking, like, off a belly-to-belly suplex. No, it was a really nice one on a much bigger guy. It actually looked very impressive. I'm willing to criticize almost all aspects of this show, but not that one. I like that suplex. I like that suplex. Write that on my headstone. R.I.P. Jack the Jobber. He liked that suplex. And then to ruin the moment, it's Ed Ferrara, everybody, once again. We cut to the announce table. Ed's got a bit of analysis on the situation. He says, look, regardless of who won, challenging Shamrock or Malice is a bit like competing in the Special Olympics, because even if you win, you're still a... And then he drops the R word, obviously. Well done, Ed, mate. Sad little dickhead. But of course, the show can't just end with a new champion being crowned. We need to remember that this is Jeff Jarrett's promotion, damn it. So we cut backstage where Jarrett is arguing with his two biggest foes in all of the land, of course, Jackie Fargo and country singer Toby Keith. And then, I wish I was making this up, Jarrett storms back out into the arena and reminds us all what we learned right at the start of the event, that this stipulation absolutely sucked. He argues with the NWA legends at ringside and starts then just beating up old men. And fair play to Bullet Bob Armstrong, who takes a cracking bump over the announce table. Anyway, the melee continues. Dory gets shoved over. Here comes Jackie to save the day. The security all hold him back. What's Jackie Fargo going to do? Hit a burning hammer or something? But no, they all hold him back. And it's a stunning return from the bored security guard from way earlier in the show. He's woken up a little bit now. Jackie then says that next week, he's going to get someone out here to kick Jarrett's ass. And then Jarrett says, we don't need to wait until next week. Let's do it right now. And then Jackie goes, all right, fine, it's Scott Hall. And here comes Scott Hall. I'm like, what's going on? And then Jeff Jarrett and Scott Hall have a pull-apart brawl on the ramp. And the announce team are all screaming and it's all out of control. And that's how the show ends. Classic, absolutely classic, with everybody losing their minds and then a smash cut to, you know, the old NWA tune they used, like the dun 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 dun, dun, and that's the show. And I think the tonal whiplash is a very appropriate ending to the show, actually, because if there's one thing that kind of sums it up, it's that line I mentioned earlier, that tightrope that they're trying to kind of walk here. One side being respect for the traditions of wrestling, and the other side being a revolutionary new thing to oppose WWE and to be the other side of wrestling now that WCW is no longer around. And instead, they fall victim to a third tempting mistress, the temptation to just do stupid offensive crap. Now, there was some good here. The opening 6-man was very good. The minis match was good. Some aspects of the gauntlet for the gold, I suppose, were good. Especially the final 2 between Shamrock and Malice was pretty good. Apart from that, real bad. Really bleh, awful. Awful wrestling. That's my analysis there. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I've lost my mind. Thank you for watching this video. I've been Jack the Jobber. This has been the latest glorious installment of Very Weird Wrestling. Thank you once again to the Patreon people. And thank you all for watching as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and all that sort of good stuff. Leave your thoughts and opinions in that comment section down below. And I'll see you very soon. My voice is going.